When people search for how to study hard like Richard Feynman, what they usually mean is how to study deeply, honestly, and effectively the way Richard Feynman approached learning. Because Feynman did not believe in studying as a performance, he believed in studying as an act of investigation, almost like a detective trying to solve a mystery that no one else cared enough to solve properly. And the first thing you must understand is that Feynman was not obsessed with looking smart. He was obsessed with actually understanding, which is a completely different goal. Because looking smart is about memorizing impressive phrases and repeating them confidently, while understanding is about being able to take an idea apart, rebuild it from scratch, explain it simply, test its limits, and admit where it breaks. And if you want to study hard the Feynman way, you must begin by shifting your identity from someone who wants high marks to someone who wants clarity. Because grades are external, but clarity is internal. And Feynman's power came from the fact that he treated confusion as a signal rather than a weakness. Whenever he encountered something he did not understand, he did not skip it, he did not hide it, he did not decorate it with jargon. He circled it like a problem that deserved attention. And this is the first discipline you must build, the courage to face what you do not understand without embarrassment. Because most students skim over confusion and hope it disappears. But Feynman would stop and say, wait, what does this actually mean? And then he would attempt to explain the concept in plain language as if he were teaching a beginner. And this practice later became famous as the Feynman technique, which is simple but brutally honest. Choose a concept, try to teach it in the simplest words possible, identify gaps in your explanation, return to the source to fill those gaps, and then simplify again until the explanation flows naturally without relying on memorized sentences. And the reason this works is because teaching forces your brain to organize information into a structure rather than leaving it scattered as disconnected facts. And studying hard in this way is not about sitting for 12 exhausted hours staring at a book. It is about active engagement, about wrestling with ideas until they become yours. Because Feynman did not passively read physics, he played with it, he questioned it, he re-derived formulas instead of blindly trusting them. And if you truly want to adopt this mindset, you must stop treating your textbook as sacred and start treating it as a draft that you must interrogate. Ask yourself why each step is true, what assumptions are hidden, what would happen if one condition changed. And when you reach a formula, do not just memorize it, try to derive it from basic principles. Because when you rebuild knowledge from foundations, you develop flexibility, and flexibility is what allows you to solve unfamiliar problems, which is what exams in real life both demand. And another crucial habit Feynman embodied was curiosity without ego. He did not learn to impress professors, he learned because the universe fascinated him. And if you want to study hard sustainably, you must connect your subject to genuine curiosity. Ask how it connects to the real world, how it explains something you see daily, how it changes the way you think about reality. Because when you attach emotion and wonder to knowledge, it becomes easier to remember and harder to abandon. And Feynman was famous for reducing complex ideas into childlike questions, not because he was simplifying for show, but because he believed that if you cannot explain something simply, you do not truly understand it. And this principle forces you to confront vagueness. For example, instead of saying energy is conserved according to Noether's theorem, try explaining what conservation actually means in everyday terms. Try connecting it to patterns you can visualize. And if you struggle, that struggle is the exact place where learning happens. And studying hard the Feynman way also requires focused solitude. He often worked alone for long stretches, thinking deeply without distraction, which in today's world means you must intentionally protect your attention from constant notifications and noise, because deep understanding requires uninterrupted time, not fragmented seconds between scrolling. And when you sit down to study, define a specific problem or question you want to solve, rather than vaguely deciding to study Chapter 5, because clarity of intention sharpens effort. And during that time, write things down in your own words, because writing forces precision, and precision reveals ignorance, and ignorance, when exposed, can be corrected. And do not fear making mistakes on paper, because mistakes are diagnostic tools. Feynman enjoyed discovering errors because each mistake showed him exactly where his reasoning failed. And instead of feeling ashamed, he treated errors like feedback from reality. And this attitude transformed studying from a stressful obligation into an experiment.
And another element of his method was rebuilding from first principles. He liked to strip ideas down to their most basic truths and then build upward logically, which means when you encounter a complicated concept, you should ask what the fundamental definitions are, what assumptions are necessary, and whether you can reconstruct the argument step by step without looking. And this exercise strengthens your conceptual skeleton so that new information has somewhere solid to attach. And studying hard also means embracing boredom strategically, because repetition and practice are unavoidable. But instead of mindless repetition, you should practice with variation. Change the numbers, alter the conditions, invent your own questions, because variation forces adaptability, and adaptability is a sign of mastery. And Feynman was also playful with problems. He would sometimes explore a question simply because it was interesting, even if it was not assigned. And this playful exploration builds intuition, which is faster and more powerful than rote memorization. And intuition grows when you see patterns repeatedly from different angles. So draw diagrams, create analogies, explain the concept out loud, debate it internally. And when you feel stuck, step away briefly and let your subconscious process, because intense focus followed by rest often produces insights. And studying hard does not mean studying endlessly without sleep, because fatigue destroys clarity. And Feynman valued thinking clearly more than grinding mechanically. So protect your sleep, your physical health, and your mental energy, because they are tools of cognition. And do not measure your progress by hours spent, but by clarity gained. Ask yourself after each session what you can now explain that you could not explain before, and if the answer is nothing, adjust your method rather than increasing time. And another crucial principle is to avoid illusion of competence, which happens when you reread notes and feel familiar with the material, but cannot reproduce it independently. So close the book and test yourself. Write everything you remember, solve problems without hints, and if you cannot, return and repair the gaps. And over time, this cycle builds genuine mastery. And Feynman also believed in questioning authority gently but firmly, not to rebel, but to ensure understanding. So do not accept statements simply because they are printed or spoken confidently. Ask for reasoning, seek multiple explanations, compare perspectives, because understanding deepens when you see an idea from different viewpoints. And finally, remember that studying hard is not a short sprint, but a long relationship with learning. Feynman's brilliance was not a product of last-minute cramming, but years of consistent curiosity and disciplined thinking. So be patient with yourself. Treat confusion as a companion rather than an enemy. Build habits of explanation, testing, simplification, and reconstruction. And over time, you will notice that you are not merely studying harder, but thinking more clearly. And that clarity is the real goal. Because when you can sit with a difficult idea, break it apart, rebuild it, and explain it simply, you are not merely imitating Richard Feynman, you are embodying the spirit that made him extraordinary.